You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our second stream 2 days in a row now on this tropical invest that we do have in the Atlantic Ocean. It is now potential Tropical Cyclone 2. I am your presenter, Thomas Schwent, doing this again tonight. Nathan hopefully will be back tomorrow for live coverage of the system. But for tonight, you're stuck with me. So, with that, I do also have the team with me that you're stuck with, because it doesn't include Nathan. And that does include David, Isaac, Max, Ryan, and Jesse. How are y'all doing?
Good to be here, team, and for our viewers, we are simulcasting once again onto Facebook.
I'm good.
All right, that is good. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Max, you got severe feedback going on there.
Oh, really?
Yep. So, with potential Tropical Cyclone 2, still getting awful feedback. I'm going to have to local mute you for just a minute. Okay, so you can see with potential Tropical Cyclone 2, the hurricane watch there in the pink. You can see that in the key, and the tropical storm watch there in the yellow. And you can also see the forecasted track. The National Hurricane Center currently forecasting a Category 1. Force 13 is also forecasting a Category 1. Latest cone of uncertainty, the first cone of uncertainty Force 13 is released operationally on their social media platforms, forecasting a 90-mile-per-hour landfall. So that's what's going on right now. National Hurricane Center going a little bit more minimal on that. I think 75 miles an hour is what they have it at right now, a minimal hurricane.
85.
You can see the graphic. It's at 85. My apologies. But still, Category 1 hurricane. All right, so with that being said, let's, I guess, just talk about this a little bit. So, to the team, what are your thoughts on this system currently? Where do we think it's going to go? And what else do we think could happen here potentially?
I mean, this is really like a system that I think there's still a lot of uncertainty with. Just look at that cone there. It seems pretty large for a storm that's only going to make landfall in 3 days.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty on both the track of this and the intensity. It looks like, Max, your feedback issues have been fixed. But
All right.
with the track and intensity issues that we are potentially seeing, it's really looking like it's going to come down to track. Track is going to determine intensity. Intensity will determine track. The farther south it goes, the stronger it gets. The stronger it gets, the farther south it goes, and vice versa. The weaker it gets, the farther north it goes. The farther north it goes, the weaker it will be. So it's the kind of thing where we're drawing this very fine line, because what we could see is we could see a mid-range tropical storm making landfall near New Orleans, something around what the National Hurricane Center is saying, about an 85, maybe even 90-mile-an-hour landfall here in western Louisiana. Or we could even see, if this goes way south, a Category 2 like hurricane, possibly headed towards the Houston area. So it's really just a question of where it goes. That's why intensity is so uncertain. But the National Hurricane Center is fairly confident that we're going to be seeing a landfall within this particular area, and has issued hurricane watches for nearly the entirety of the southern Louisiana coastline.
Yeah, I also want to add, really, it's all about how long it stays over water. The more intense it will be, the longer it stays over water.
There we go. And Max, it does look like you are screen sharing something.
Yes, I'm screen sharing the latest imagery, and you can see it is really consolidated in the last day or so to the point where I'm on the borderline of whether or not to call this a bona fide tropical depression.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it's really starting to head towards tropical depressions status soon.
It's getting there, yeah.
Yeah, getting there.
It is getting quite close, and the National Hurricane Center, at least I think, is going to, at their intermediate, not their intermediate, at their next full advisory, I think they'll have a tropical depression forecasted, honestly. So
just wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much at the moment. It's a wait and see kind of game. So here we go. We do have a question. Will PTC2L become a Cat 3? Probably not, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, I'd say it's unlikely. I mean, really, here's the thing about it being Cat 3. You'd have to, like, really intensify and stay over water for a long period. If it takes a southward track, it has the possibility of being a major.
I mean, I don't
We'll
know.
just have to
I'd
see, yeah.
say that for this thing to become a major, it would have to undergo like Alicia or Harvey type intensification. Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to happen, but
Yeah, climatology is not on its side. Sea surface temperatures are, as well as the current steering pattern. So we'll see. I think that the size of the system will also be crucial. It looks like it's going to be a small system. So because of how small it is, it could undergo one period of rapid intensification. And even one period will easily get it to a Category 1 or maybe even pushing a Category 2. So it's not going to be that difficult for the storm if it wants to get to a intensity of hurricane status or above. And Max, I'm starting to get feedback issues again. But yeah, it's really just a matter of where exactly and when exactly this is going to turn, and just how strong it will be when it does so. Because we have quite a complex steering pattern, so this is going to make almost a circle. You can see the best track here on the stream. You can see this is probably going to make almost a circle, and even the GFS way later has shown a couple of runs this coming back down and maybe doing something again, which is very unlikely, but it's just to prove my point. This will probably be headed in a very circular fashion, kind of. We'll see if it does head back south, although that seems to be seems like the chances of that are low, but not impossible. I still think that's just going to be kind of interesting. We have a couple of questions. What are the chances of a Category 2? I'd say about 40%, honestly.
Maybe like 50-50, something like that.
Maybe 50-50.
Really...
You know what, actually, yeah, I'd agree with that. I think 50-50. I think it's pretty 50-50. I know there are some people that disagree with me, and that's completely fine. The National Hurricane Center isn't giving it a Category 2. Some people are going to tell you it's probably around 40-30%. I'm going to go with 50-50, but I'd just say it's possible, and definitely something that needs to be watched. I do apologize for the thunder that has just gone through everyone's... Wow.
That's pretty loud.
That was within a mile of me. That was very bright.
Will 2L.
That's one of the best I've heard.
There we go. What is the totality of content? What are the chances of a major hitting Canada? This guy's saying this is the totality of content. What's the chance of a major hurricane hitting Canada? I don't know. Why do you ask me these things? I don't know. Honestly, if you want the truth. Ryan, what are the chances? This is on you now.
What are they asking?
What are the chances of a major hurricane hitting Canada?
Just in general?
Mhm.
I mean, right now it's probably 0.0001% because there's
I don't
nothing.
know. I think the
Something
closest
can't.
ever seen to that was Juan of 2003. And that
Has a
hit
major
minimal.
hurricane ever hit Canada? No.
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, closest I think was Juan of 2003, and that hit is like a
Yeah.
minimal Cat 2.
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of questions coming in. If you do have questions, please save them for a little while later, after half past the hour, after we talk about thoughts on the system and stuff. We will go to a Q&A for the remainder of the hour. So please just bear with us. We're just going to continue to talk about a few other things regarding the system, and then we will go to a Q&A. So I guess we're going to have 3 topics here. So the first topic that I want to discuss with everyone is going to be where is this going to go? What's it going to peak at? I know we've kind of had a discussion, but I just want to know everyone's thoughts. So I'll start off the conversation. I think that this is going to really go pretty close to the NHC's track, dead center, honestly. I don't think it's going to wobble that far. I'd honestly narrow in the cone some myself. And I'd also say that a peak of 90 to 100 is my most realistic possibility at the moment. So that's what I'm thinking at the moment. So I guess now off to Ryan. Ryan, what are your thoughts? What do you think it's going to do?
I'd really agree with you, Thomas. I'm thinking like maybe 90 right now. I think 90 is safe for the moment, right? And I think it's going to follow the NHC's cone or pretty close to it.
All right, Max, what are you thinking?
I also kind of agree. I think the NHC's cone does it justice, and it will probably end up following it to some degree. Intensity-wise, I'd say most likely maybe moderate to strong Cat 1, maybe a weak Cat 2 if it goes further south along the cone.
And I would agree with you there. Isaac, what are you thinking about this?
I think it depends really where the well-defined area of low pressure decides to form, because it's still fairly disorganized at this point in time. I've seen a lot of mesovortices kind of just rotating around there, but once we get like a concrete evidence of wherever the heck the main center decides to form, then we'll have a better grasp of it. If it decides to form more north, I would suggest there be a weaker storm and obviously probably make landfall a lot sooner. Maybe tropical storm or so. Might get to Cat 1, depends how it decides to go about it. If it decides to go more south, I believe it'll probably be a stronger storm, kind of like what the NHC is saying, and probably go over towards western Louisiana. Might go as far west as maybe the Louisiana-Texas border, but for now the models are kind of focused on it making landfall somewhere in Louisiana, at least as a low end or high end tropical storm or low end hurricane at this point. But it all depends, really, in my opinion, where the exact center decides to form. Still getting organized as we.
All right, I am going to turn on the model spread real quick so everyone can see it relative to the cone. It looks like models are farther to the east than the NHC's cone. And then finally, Jesse, what are your thoughts on this system? What do you think it's going to do?
I think it could probably run 90 miles per hour, possibly 100 miles per hour peak. Somewhere probably close to the Louisiana-Texas border. It's just really uncertain at this point, so yeah.
All right, well, I would have to say that we're all probably in pretty close agreement there. The second topic that I wanted to talk about here with everyone is going to be what exactly are we thinking about impacts? Whether it's a tropical storm or it's a Category 2, regardless of what it does, what impacts do you think it will bring?
Rainfall. Lots of it.
I would agree.
Like, maybe like some isolated spots up to 15 inches. I don't know if anyone has a weather prediction center graphic that we can show.
I can make it like the 6th overlay here.
Okay.
There we go. So now you can see the forecast map, the model spread, where it's going, the watches and warnings, the current radar, and the precipitation forecast. I'll turn off current radar. That's just overwhelming. And then hopefully the rest of it The rest of it should speak for itself. I'll actually turn off the model spread too. You can see precipitation and how it's going to follow the cone. There we go.
Yeah, so it looks like really the eastern side of the system is going to see the most amount of rain.
Yeah, and speaking of rainfall, David, you said that you found something of referring to the extremely dangerous flooding going on in New Orleans. A flash flood emergency was issued earlier today there, and they're only going to be getting more rain, over a foot possible. So this is going to be a catastrophic situation. New Orleans doesn't need any more rain. Lots of rain's already fallen. It looks like they're only going to get more. So, David?
The rainfall factor is a critical component along with storm surge. Storm surge could be around 3 feet or higher, but that area that you mentioned, Thomas, can't afford to see further rainfall. And one of our members, his property was inundated by flood water, and the concern has to bring in the effects on the Mississippi. But looking at some information before we came live, a Cat 1 landfall, possibly around 1 a.m. on Saturday. And this is what, in addition to the thunderstorm activity starting to develop in other areas of the state. But I believe there's a marine wind warning in place, and I had a look at the storm surge interactive map, and quite a bit of coastal area under the advisory or warning.
Yeah, it's definitely true. So very dangerously high amounts of rainfall can be expected with this system, and you can see that here accordingly. Very, very dangerous amounts of rainfall can be expected. So this is going to be quite something. So we'll see what exactly this does do. And finally, this is the final topic of this storm. We've gone over track, we've gone over intensity, we've gone over impacts. So now the question is, when it does hit, when it does impact, I know flooding is going to be the biggest threat, but what do we think is going to occur storm surge-wise, immediate coastal impacts? We know rain's going to be the main impact, but that's going to impact from the coast and inland. If you're along the coast, where these hurricane watches are and tropical storm watches are, to the team, what do we think those areas should be preparing for and expecting?
Well, if you are in a hurricane watch, you should be prepared for the possibility of hurricane force winds within the next 48 hours. If you're in tropical storm watch, same idea, but with tropical storm force wind. Storm surge watch, that means that areas, or their potential for life-threatening storm surge is there. It is possible. It's not, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it is possible within the next 48 hours. So it is definitely something that you need to keep an eye on. Does anyone have any suggestions of what to potentially do if you're under those watches?
Get out.
Evacuate.
I would say if officially ordered to, if the National Hurricane Center orders a voluntary or mandatory evacuation, or anyone for that matter under the authority of the National Weather Service or the United States government, please do heed what they do tell you to do. It's extremely important that you do that, because it's the difference between life and death in most scenarios. The National Hurricane Center has some of the best meteorologists on the planet. So they really do know what they're doing when they forecast these tropical cyclones, and you really need to take their forecast seriously. The National Hurricane Center is one of the best RSMCs that there is, and so just please heed their warnings, take them seriously. They're there for a reason. They're very cohesive. The National Hurricane Center, again, knows what they're doing, so please follow your local officials' instructions. Local media, Force 13, National Hurricane Center, everyone, any of those mediums will be covering this extensively, so just tune into any of those and you will be okay.
And also being prepared for ensure that your drainage around your roofing is free of any debris, leaves. Have an emergency plan, emergency kit, and probably a sufficient supply of food.
Yeah. I know that one of our team members, the one down in New Orleans, said he'll be buying lots of water today, and he will be buying his canned SpaghettiOs to get through this potential tropical storm. So, yeah, it looks like this soon-to-be a tropical depression is really going to slam Louisiana here. So now that all that's out of the way, I'm going to pull up current satellite imagery for everyone on the stream to see. And the question is, what do we think of this system right now? Right, I guess I'll be going first. So I feel like the system, it's got much more convection over its center. You can see a nice spin to it now. It does have convection covering that center. It does look like it is dying away a little bit, although it is losing diurnal heating. It is beginning to cool. So convection may not be as bolstered, but I think that this could definitely be a tropical depression. It looks like it's consolidated. It looks like it's bundling up, tightening up. So I think this could be becoming a tropical depression in short order.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. It definitely has much more of a tight, obvious circulation. There isn't really appear to be any other circulations competing for dominance. I mean, this appears to have established itself and doesn't seem to be open circulation in any obvious way. I don't really see anything against it becoming a tropical depression by the next NHC advisory.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It definitely looks like there's now really a dominant circulation with this, and it might be a tropical depression right now.
Do we have any recon information of when the next flight's going to take place?
Recon went into the storm earlier today and found a center pretty much right about where we're thinking it is, and I believe they found flight level winds. Well, at least it was suspect flight level winds actually, up to about 45 knots, and suspect flight level winds were about 40 knots or so. So at this point, there may be a definite dominant circulation forming here, and that's what Recon is suggesting here.
We do, I think, have another reconnaissance aircraft, sorry to interrupt, that is currently en route, that has passed through recently as well, still currently in flight, not quite done yet either, that has found some rather strong flight level winds as well. Flight level winds up to around 35 knots so far in this current ongoing mission.
And what area, what quadrant for those winds?
So the winds were found actually, this may be of surprise, at least it is to me. It looks like they found a lot of those winds on the, this is actually going to be more of a half, the western half of the storm. So and it looks like there is a little bit on the eastern as well. There are a few peaks, but it looks like it's pretty well rounded where those stronger winds are at the moment. So it looks like this is pretty well established in that way.
It's definitely got a lot better organized since this morning.
I would agree. I think it's gotten organized about as fast as forecast. And
Yeah, I've been really looking at how this has been comparing with the forecast. It's really doing pretty good. It's really following what some of the forecasts were saying this morning.
and I think it's going to continue to follow that. Something that I have noticed is a trend, though, with forecasts is that storms will be forecasted a little weaker than expected, especially at the initialization phase. A little bit weaker than what actually occurs. They will be expected to be weaker than what actually occurs. And that's what I think is happening here. I think that it's going to be pretty 50-50. I think it's going to be a 90 to 100 mile per hour storm. But again, we will see. And still, this is a potential tropical cyclone. It's not a tropical depression or storm. I saw a couple of people in the chat saying that it is not a tropical depression or storm at this time. It is still potential Tropical Cyclone 2. It's just getting quite a bit more organized.
Thomas, any chance we can have a look at sea surface temperature?
Sea surface temperatures are about, last I saw, they're about 30 to 29 degrees Celsius, which is, of course, plenty of enough to sustain at least a tropical storm.
Yeah, here we go.
About 31 degrees Celsius.
Also,
plus
wind
where,
shear?
Shear and SSTs, I'll put them both on the stream.
Because what I was looking at is as the system tracks into 31 Celsius.
Yeah, it's in 31 Celsius waters. It's going to be in 30 to 31 Celsius waters throughout its entire life. Sea surface temperatures are not going to be a problem. They're actually very warm, and the system looks to be in a little bit of a pocket of low shear at the moment. So I don't think that shearing is going to be a problem, at least for the first chunk of its life. And that's definitely going to be problematic for areas like New Orleans, areas like Houston, Baton Rouge. So, just if you're within the NHC's cone of uncertainty or around it, if you're in a watch or warning from the National Hurricane Center, or you're close to those watches and warnings, or you can tell just by the rainfall map that tropical cyclone-related rainfall is going to occur, you need to be watching this very closely, because this will be impacting a lot of areas within the United States. And this is just something, whatever it does, regardless of whether it is a tropical depression or a Category 3, it's still going to produce a ton of rain. I mean, that's pretty much a given at this point. And flooding is the most dangerous part of a hurricane. That's something that I know a lot of people don't think. A lot of people think it's going to be your wind. It's going to be the wind speeds that really do it, because that's what the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale is based off of. But what causes the most deaths and destruction to property in most cases is going to be flooding. So just keep that in mind and prepare for flooding, but also please still prepare for those winds, prepare for storm surge. Those preparations, you just need to be cautious and being careful of that, because I know that some people don't always prepare, maybe just because they're not informed just yet. But I'm informing you now. It's time to prepare if you're in a hurricane watch or tropical storm watch, or you're in this cone of uncertainty. You have less than 3 days. You have about 3 days. You have less than 3 days before the outer bands are going to start moving in. So it's just dangerous. If you look at the predictions now, a hurricane watch is in effect. When around 12 Zulu or 7 o'clock Central Daylight Time strikes tomorrow morning. That's when you need to make the decision of whether you need to evacuate or not. You're not going to have time after that, because it's gonna start moving in, and it's gonna start moving in quickly. So just be ready for this. Start seriously considering the actions that need to be taken in the event that this hurricane were to strike your area. All right, we are past half an hour here. What were you going to say? Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yeah, this is probably a little less than 3 days before landfall. This is not, you don't have a lot of time to make these decisions. Got to make them very soon.
Yeah, the earliest looking at the earliest reasonable arrival time for tropical storm force winds on the National Hurricane Center, they forecast the earliest reasonable time, at least, about 8 p.m. Thursday is when it's going to start. There's going to start being tropical storm force winds over eastern Louisiana, heading towards New Orleans probably at about 10 p.m. or so Thursday, and then western Louisiana probably about Friday morning or so, when tropical storm force winds are going to start being felt there. Of course, it could be a little bit later, it could be a little bit earlier than that. So just make sure you're prepared for this, really.
Yeah, definitely. And all right, we are over half past the hour, so now we are going into the Q&A section. If you have questions, we're going to start answering them now. Just tag Force13 and we will start answering them. If you asked a question before, probably didn't see it, we only answered a few, please ask it again if you still have it and we didn't answer it. So let's begin. First question: did Invest 92L make any waterspouts? I honestly don't know. I think that there probably have been some storms that formed that probably were capable of producing waterspouts that had rotation, but I don't know if any actually did.
I believe it did actually form one waterspout, if I'm not mistaken. I know for a fact that it formed a tornado over Louisiana and caused some damage to some homes, unfortunately. I didn't hear anything about any deaths or injuries, but there's a tornado that happened in, I think, Louisiana yesterday that caused some damage to some.
Yeah, and with that being said, we do have another question. How big do you think storm surges are going to be? I'd say up to 6 feet.
Maybe 3 to 6 feet, in my
3 to
opinion.
6. That's what the National Hurricane Center Storm Surge Watch currently has in the forecast. 3 to 6 feet.
Oh, really?
With locally higher amounts. So,
okay.
yeah.
The storm surge and inundation map shows, for the most part, about maybe 3 foot of storm surge inundation with isolated parts of 6 feet plus of storm surge inundation graph.
Yep. We have another question. Is there a good chance this storm's going to reach high-end Category 1? I'd say yes. I'd say there's a
chance of
better
that.
than 50% in my opinion. But I don't know. We don't know for sure. So we have another question. Could 92L be a lot like Hurricane Nate, just slower?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, could it...
Like,
That was their question. They're basically asking, is this going to be a lot like Nate was of 2017? It's just going to be a little bit slower upon landfall. Are the impacts going to be similar, is his question.
Nate was kind of a weakening storm at landfall and was moving, like, really fast. This one's going to be kind of the opposite in the way that they're forecasting it to be much up until landfall.
Yeah.
It was moving north as well. It was moving from the south Gulf of Mexico upwards.
and also hit closer to the New Orleans area, whereas this is projected pretty much to hit somewhere closer to the other side of Louisiana.
It's looking like, well, really, I think it could hit anywhere in
Yeah,
the state of Louisiana. It's just, there's a lot of uncertainties still with it.
yeah. Nate generally had less uncertainty.
Well, yeah, because Nate was moving so fast, there was a lot of, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah. All right. We do have another question here. Is there any chance of this becoming a Category 2? Yes, there's certainly a chance. I would personally just at the moment give it about 40 to 50%.
I think 40 is fair.
All right. And then we also do have another person that's come on. Cyclone Freak, how have you been? How you doing?
How are you? I'm known as, you know.
All right.
So I wanted to put out something on Nate.
What about
For those of you that don't know, I was actually staying in South Georgia, Southwest Georgia, where an isolated tornado was produced by the system about 48 hours ago. Threat to my area, and I thought I should let you guys know that, you know, necessarily need to be in the impact you. I mean, tornadoes are just as capable of killing a person as a hurricane. I don't think people realize what the outer bands are capable of doing. People think they're not as strong as they really think they are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, albeit tornadoes tend to be weaker when they're, with the tropical cyclones, they still can pack quite a punch. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the strongest one was either from Harvey in 2017 or I forgot the name of the storm. I can't believe I forgot it. But one in the 60s, and they were both EF4s or F4s.
You're talking about Carla, right?
Yeah, Carla. I don't know how I forgot the name of.
All right. With that being said, we do have another question here. Next question being, what is the chance of 2L hitting Houston or Galveston now? And then this actually goes along with another person's question. As this shifts, if it does hit around the Houston-Galveston area, could it be a major hurricane because of that shift? Farther southward track and a farther westward track. At least in my opinion, I think that the chances of this hitting Houston or Galveston are, I mean, they're decent. I mean, I'd say about 30% chance of it hitting either of those locations. I'd say if the forecast track's going to shift, I think it's more likely this is going to go east of the forecasted track by a little bit than it is going to go west. Not that it can't go west, I just think that's where it's more likely to go, is eastward. But if this were to go westward, I think a major hurricane is a very real possibility. Again, the farther west it goes, the farther south it goes, the longer it's over water, and the more time it has to strengthen. And that's all it needs is time. Time is all it needs to strengthen. Everything else is in place. It just needs as much time as it can in order to strengthen. So I'd say it's a very real possibility.
And I would say this storm is not going to weaken. Well, there's a 95% chance it's not going to weaken up until landfall. I mean, a major hurricane is very probable. Low wind shear in the atmosphere, higher water temperatures. I mean, personal guess, would be about 20% chance of Cat 3 landfall if more west.
Yeah, we have some other questions. What are the chances of rapid intensification? I'd say it's fair. I'd say, at least in my opinion, it's got a good chance of rapidly intensifying. When a storm is smaller like this, I know someone else asked how big the wind field's going to be. When storms have a smaller wind field like this one is going to, you definitely have stuff that it. Here, let me just rephrase that. It's easier for storms to rapidly intensify when they're smaller like this one.
if it was like a bigger storm, it would take a little bit longer. It would be usually a gradual increase in intensity. But the more smaller it is, the faster it's able to intensify. There's a lot of textbook examples of that. There's Harvey, there's Danny in 2015. A lot of examples of that.
All right, and I have just added the great Strat Becker. He said he wants in. We'll see if he joins. He's not joining. Okay, so while we wait for the great Strat Becker, Strat, are you here?
Yes, I have just joined. How we doing, everybody?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good tonight. I was watching the stream for a bit, wrapped up some activities that I joined in and helped provide some covers tonight.
All right, well,
I've seen you guys do a spectacular job the past 2 nights.
thank you. Here we go. So, a few other questions. First one, what am I using for my map? I'm using a piece of software called Weather Studio version 3. You can check that out just by going to WSV3.com. That's not an affiliate of Force 13. That's just what I use. And I just think it's cool, so that's why I use it. We do have another question. Could PTC2 become a Cat 3 or even a weak Cat 4? I think Cat 3 is plausible. I think Cat 4 is basically no. That's not going to happen.
No Cat 4.
No.
The further west it goes, the better chance it has for intensification. But the model consensus has shifted significantly east compared to yesterday. You know, a lot of the models tried to have it moving into the Galveston area yesterday. Our initial CDPS projection area was in Texas, and we've shifted east in the past 36 hours now to Louisiana. I think other than I think the UK Met, the official forecast track is the furthest west model. So
I think the H-Wharf also pretty much takes it along that.
I know the H-Wharf has been everyone was getting really interested last night because the HWRF tried to show an almost Category 4 storm, but the HWRF still tries to show almost a Category 3, but it shifted it does show a Category 3 actually still, when it shifted that landfall location to around New Orleans instead this time. I think the difference is it brings it from not existing right now to 100 knots in less than 3 days. And this was the 18Z run, so this would be in less than 60 hours it'd want to do that, which would be pretty improbable. The GFS is a lot more muted, showing only 56 knots at maximum. So there's variability in the forecast intensity of this, but if it manages to stay further south and drift west, it can easily intensify further.
And we'll see if that does occur. Model consensus has shifted quite a bit east, like Strat has said, and I think the next NHC forecast cone will probably reflect that. GFS ensembles have stayed farther westward, though, so we'll see what does happen there. We do have a couple of other questions here. What are the chances of a slight risk for tornadoes on the eastern side? I'd say they're fairly high. I mean, you're going to get isolated tornadoes with a system like this one. So, I mean, I think there's a pretty good probability of that occurring.
And also, we have to wait a little bit to see how the convection really develops around the system. I don't know if I kind of joined a bit late, so I don't know if you guys looked over satellite imagery, but I took a quick look over just before I joined, and convection's kind of consolidated around the storm, and some of the broader convections kind of split off from it. So I think that it's the northern and northeastern side still looks a bit exposed though. So if that side develops, then you can see increased tornado risk.
And I think by the time it does get to Louisiana, that side will likely be developed. We do have another question, and I think that I can take this, but if someone else wants to, they can. What's the difference between a tropical and subtropical cyclone? So the main difference is really the characteristics. So in order for a system to be tropical, it has to have a closed center of circulation. It has to form in the tropics. It has to have lots of convection over over its center. It has to be an independent system, independent of fronts, independent of other things. It has to be its own thing. Subtropical cyclones are the combination of a tropical and extratropical cyclone. Extratropical cyclones normally are big, they produce fronts, their centers are closed, they still do produce fairly strong winds, they're just at a much larger scale, there isn't much convection associated with them. But when you get a smaller scale storm, such as maybe something along the lines of a tropical cyclone, doesn't have much convection, still has the strong winds, maybe it's associated with the front, you get your subtropical cyclone. All right. We have another question here. What do you guys think about the models in the current track? So, I know we discussed this a little bit. Models are forecasting this to go farther eastward than they were yesterday.
And I think one of the reasons with that is that during last night's stream, when it was getting higher percentage chances and the low was first coming over into the Gulf of Mexico, it came in further east than the models were originally initiating it at by a degree or two, and that's kind of forced the models to adapt to shift the forecast track east and return to kind of compensate for that. So before, when we had the GFS and European showing, Texas landfalls, made multiple of our team members, that live in the area starting to get more concerned about it. That shifted significantly east. I think you have a spaghetti spread of models out on your on the screen right now, do you?
I do. Here,
I don't know which one of these each one is because they're pretty thin lines, but you can kind of gather from that most of them are clustered to a landfall just southwest of New Orleans at this time, rather than let's say yesterday's stream where we were looking at the Texas Louisiana border. And I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see a further shift east in this track, at least a little bit. But we're getting more towards the time period where tracks can be more certain, just because the low is more well defined at this time, and the time period before the actual landfall is much closer as well.
Yeah, the strange thing that I'm finding here is that it looks like the GFS ensembles, at least, have really not shifted since 6Z today, and it looks like a jog westward may be a more realistic possibility in the future. So that's something to definitely watch. I think that the wobble eastward, the wobble westward is going to continue over the next day or two. And I think that by the time we get relatively close to landfall, we will see really just how strong the storm is and where exactly it is. I mean, it really does just come down to where's it going to be. That's the guessing game, and I really don't think that we truly know yet. We have another person asking, should Houston evacuate? If local officials say so, then yes. If they don't, then no. I mean, it's as simple as that. We're not professionals at telling you when and when not to evacuate. I think that we can all admit that. But we will let you know when the National Weather Service or the National Hurricane Center declares an evacuation, just as the local media would.
Yeah, just listen to your local officials, and if they tell you to evacuate, you evacuate. If they don't tell you to evacuate, don't evacuate.
That's totally correct. Local officials come before us. We're covering more of a broad sense of things. If you want direct information about your specific area, we can try to be more specific, but it's always better to look at your local or state officials to get the direct information for your area. And I just wanted to go to something that I noticed as well, because you were talking about the ensembles. I decided to look through them. The GFS has become more spread out throughout the past 24 hours on its model consensus. It's less certain now than it was a day ago.
And I think that's really due to the model solutions that it was indicating. So to fill everyone in, the GFS and the European were predicting very different things at the beginning of the storm's life. GFS was predicting a surface level center near Florida. The European was predicting a surface level center west of Florida, on the west coast. Northern coast was the GFS, the northern coast one formed. What was wrong, the GFS got wrong, was that a crap ton of convection still formed on the west coast. And what the Euro got wrong was where the center formed. And because of that, they both had to kind of come into a compromise. And as a result of that compromise, I really think that I just think that it's harder to predict because the combination of the two. Once the mid-level center and the surface level center really start to stack, I think things will become a lot more certain. Right now, things are leaning eastward because it looks like when they stack, the surface level center is going to have a little bit more of a tug on the mid-level center as well, and they're going to kind of compromise in the middle. While what could happen is the mid-level center remains pretty dominant over the surface level. The surface level gets tugged into it and it goes farther south, and therefore bringing the farther westward track. So the two scenarios right now, it's looking a little bit more likely that we will get the farther eastward track at the moment, but we'll see. And Isaac, you said you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was wanting to go off of a point like you were mentioning like way far back. In terms of like the westward jog, now that we got Recon going in there, well, we had Recon going in there rather, they're gonna put that data and analysis that they got from that into the models now. And then also I heard something about I don't know if it was with all of the models. I think it was with one of them. I'm not sure exactly which one it was. I think it was the UK Met, if I remember correctly. But I think it was analyzing trough or something like that, way too strong and forecasting it differently. And thus it had the storm going, I think, far north or something like that. So with those two factors added on, westward jog isn't out of the question, I would say. But for now, at this point in time, it looks like Louisiana is going to be the big target at this point in time for O2L or PTC2 rather. And going off of earlier, I'm sorry, I'm talking a little bit. Going off earlier, I was seeing a lot of reports of flash flooding going on in New Orleans, and they had a flash flood emergency issued over there a few hours back. But anyways, go ahead, guys.
All right, we are going to be taking a break here for the next 5 minutes. We will be back for another hour of coverage here, and we'll be answering more of your questions, talking more discussion on Invest 92L, potential Tropical Cyclone 2. We'll be discussing more of if we think it'll be dubbed a depression at the next advisory, and we'll also be discussing just who it will be impacting. So you'll get that here in top of the hour. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back soon.
You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
Alright everyone, hello and welcome back to our second hour of coverage here on Force 13. This is Force 13 Live, and we are going to be covering this again for the next hour. It's going to be some interesting topics, and the National Hurricane Center advisory should be coming out within this hour as well. The brand new full advisory will see the new forecast track. We'll see the new intensities that are expected. We're going to see a lot of new information, new watches, new warnings, a lot of new things, and we're going to be right here covering it all for you. So here we are. We'll be waiting until that advisory. Until then, though, I do have the team with me, and we're going to be discussing this potential tropical cyclone. So with me today, I have David, Isaac, Max, Jesse, Strat, Cyclone Freak, as well as Samuel. And before we do get into conversation, David, you said we do have a question from Facebook.
Yes, got to be here for the second hour. We continue the simulcast on the Facebook page when we look at the Atlantic Basin, the Gulf of Carpentaria. And I'll put this out to each member, including you, Thomas. The ocean heat content, the sea surface temperature, which is the hottest part.
So what's the hottest part of the basin?
Yep.
So
at this point in time.
Right where the storm's going, honestly. The storm's going into the hottest part
today at the sea surface temperatures, but I think last night they were consistently in the around 30 degrees Celsius, right where the storm is right now.
Yeah, it's going to be about 30 to 32 throughout this storm's entire life.
Have we shown ocean heat content maps at all? Although I don't think it's gonna, for this system, it's gonna matter at a particular level just because it's moving at a relatively nice pace at this point in time.
We have not shown ocean heat content maps now.
If you bring up that site that you showed the wind shear, and wind shear is only, about 5 to 10 knots?
Yeah, at the moment, that's what it looks like. Site. Yeah, so I can bring that back up. There it is. So you can see wind shear relatively low where the infest is right now. It's kind of on this borderline, but it looks like it's going to get into the mid-level center. It's vertically stacked, and wind shear is going to be low here for a while because the mid-level center has jurisdiction over where that shear is. That's the lowest pocket is where that mid-level center is located, it looks like at the moment. So definitely something interesting, to say the least. Anticyclonic flow going over the storm, and it does look like we will have a front coming in here that will be bringing southwesterly flow to it, which will steer it northward. The question is when that's going to happen.
And for our viewers looking at the screen, the scale for sea surface temperatures, right hand side of the screen, and look at that area in brown, which is 31 and above.
And just a quick pop-up on the ocean heat content map for 26 degrees Celsius, which is, the sustainable level for tropical cyclone development most usually. This is probably the peak area where it's at right now. You could find a sliver where it's at least closer to 100 meters deep. But the rest of the northern Gulf is almost nothing, not just as close to the coast, but just the time of year. It's probably going to be another month or two before we really see a lot of heat content in that area. But like we were saying, it's moving at a relatively nice pace, and the water's just so warm straight at the surface that ocean heat content is going to be playing a particularly heavy role at this time. Someone asked, when will it become a tropical storm? If we looked at satellite imagery, it's been consolidating pretty nicely over the past 12 hours or so. It's likely within the next 12 to 24 hours that it's at least a tropical depression. And then from there, probably 18 to 24 hours, we'll likely see this intensify into a tropical storm strength system.
No, I don't know. Say with the way it's been progressing, I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a named system sometime early tomorrow morning.
Its maximum sustained winds as of 0Z on the ATCF is, so 2 hours ago, it was 30 miles an hour. They'll probably go with that on the advisory as well. It could get its act together a bit more quickly than we expect to become overnight and become a named storm then. But, I mean, the forecast calls for something 18 to 24 hours from now is when we're going to initially see tropical storm strength is kind of the consensus. Yeah, David there actually just posted the ATCF raw numbers, so that shows
Yes.
the date is the 190711. The time is 4 zeros, which is midnight universal time. Then it shows the location of it in degrees. Then ATL means the region, so Atlantic. 25 is the knot strength, which is 30 miles an hour, and then that 1009 is the pressure in millibars at the time. And usually, unless there's more immediate data coming in from reconnaissance planes or a urgent development, they typically go with those numbers on their updates. Someone asked, what do we expect the rainfall total to be? I think on this graphic that you have, it shows the projected rainfall totals. Am I wrong, Thomas?
Yeah, that does project rainfall totals. You're correct on that.
I don't know what the ledger is for that. So what are these totals show in general, like the big yellows and oranges?
So when it comes to the general ledgers, just a moment. So general ledgers, when it comes to rainfall total, the yellows, that's going to be really when you get to over a foot in rainfall accumulation. So when you're talking quantitatively, you're above 10 inches once you get into these the brighter yellow. The brown is about 7 inches. Once you get into the red, you're about 2.5 to 3 inches. And once you get into the purples, you're about 2 to 1.5 inches, and you're at less than an inch by the time you're getting into the greens.
So is it that brighter yellows 10 plus inches of rain?
Yeah.
Okay. So it shows a good chunk of south central Louisiana getting 10 plus inches of rain, and then all of Louisiana, according to this forecast for the person that asked, getting at least 3 to 4 inches of rain, kind of spreading out to southern Mississippi and a little bit of Alabama. Most of Texas being spared, and this is the 5 p.m. Eastern graphic. I wouldn't be surprised, though, to see this graphic shift a bit to the north and east in the next update, just because the forecast track is probably going to be adjusted to fit more in line with the 0Z model runs, showing that shift closer to New Orleans in particular. But regardless of that, right now, it's a huge rainfall threat for the whole state of Louisiana at minimum.
And just reading the advisory from the NHC, rainfall amounts exceeding 6 to 9 inches have already occurred across portions of New Orleans.
So the notable thing is that it was a pretty broad system. The center of the system now isn't really that broad, although you'll have, general convection, some thunderstorms still significantly far out. Yesterday and early today, and actually still right now, there's still heavy convection rainfall over New Orleans right now. As the system was more broad, it was producing heavy rain bands throughout a large swath of land in the southeastern United States, from Louisiana all the way into Georgia. It just so happens that what's left of those outer bands that have kind of dissipated as the storms consolidated, its mid-level and low-level centers together, is right over New Orleans as we speak. Unfortunately for them, that's been just raising the rain totals and water levels and softening up the ground significantly before potentially intense cyclone is hitting the area within the next 2 to 3 days.
Yeah, that is true. And regarding rainfall, I know I've gotten a lot of thoughts here, but I want to go down the line for those that missed it last hour. So Isaac, what are your thoughts on just this in general, rainfall, stuff like that? Any other thoughts you want to express? What do you think about this system?
Well, rainfall-wise, first of all, just going off of that, rainfall, the National Hurricane Center is forecasting 15 or more inches of rain in an isolated little pocket. I sent you an image in the chat earlier. Nice little pocket in south central Louisiana. Over towards New Orleans, they're forecasting about 6 inches plus or so of additional rainfall here. And then they're forecasting pretty much for the entire state of Louisiana at least 4 inches of rainfall from PTC2. There's also some, that isolated amount again of 15 inches. The storm itself right now is doing a little bit better than the National Hurricane Center. Not the National Hurricane Center, the recon flight that went through the storm earlier looks to have found possibly a center right about where we thought it would be. So we'll see what they think in the next update that should come out within this hour, hopefully. And it seems to be organizing as we speak. Sea surface temperatures are about 30 to 31 degrees Celsius, I believe. Maybe as far down as 29 degrees Celsius in some parts where it's at. And where it's headed into, sea surface temperatures are above 31 degrees Celsius, which is probably why the NHC is forecasting for it to be strengthening pretty much up until landfall, which is obviously not great news. Storm surge is likely to be about 3 feet or so for the most part, maybe some isolated parts of 6 feet of storm surge inundation around maybe south central or southwestern Louisiana, depending on where exactly it makes landfall at. And that's really all I can think of at this point in time, unless you guys have more thought.
And Thomas, a special welcome to our audience over in the Philippines on Facebook.
All right, and with that being said, just to the rest of the team, any other thoughts on PTC2, rainfall, track intensity, stuff like that? What would you say, just general thoughts are, where is it going to go? How intense is it going to be? People already know my opinion. I think it's going to follow pretty close to the NHC track, and I think that it could get 90 to 100 miles an hour. That's my forecast. So to everyone else, what are your thoughts on it?
I just think one thing of note is that this rainfall graphic is additional rainfall on top of what's already fallen. So, large swaths of 10 plus inches is on top of potentially 6+ inches that have already fallen within those areas.
Some places are already getting 9 inches.
Really, that much?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen all the local reports yet, but I'm assuming that's in southeastern Louisiana.
Yeah, New Orleans got a lot. Flash flood emergency earlier today.
That's where they're still getting some convection right now. And that's probably going to go on and at least looking at the satellite imagery for a couple hours or so. Someone actually asked in the chat if we could pull some satellite imagery on the storms, because I don't think we've shown it recently. We've had, more individual graphics up there rather than some imagery. I can pull it up through screen share if you want me to, or you can pull it up in another way.
All right, I got it pulled up here so people can see it.
Perfect.
You can see the nice Tropical Tidbits loading screen here for a hot second. And there we go. You can see actual imagery now. So this is visible imagery, but it gives you a good idea of how the storm looks, and I think it's the best representation of where the center is. I think it does a better job of showing where the center is than infrared at the moment, just because infrared has a lot more color contours, and that can make it look a little more confusing. But you can see that center, and this almost looks like it's headed pretty due south at the moment.
I feel like that kind of creates a sense of confusion with the models a bit, just because they have it going further east than the NHC cone. So you'd expect the National Hurricane Center to adjust southward, or not southward, eastward, but at the same time, the storms, at least the center of PTC2, looks like it's already drifted further south than any model has projected it to go at this point in time at the 0Z runs.
Which is very bad news.
They initiated it around just below 28 degrees north, and it looks like it's already at or slightly below 27 degrees north. It could be just around there.
Yeah.
The low-level center is still slightly detached from the mid-level, and the low-level sector is going to be north and east. Looks like more like a bit east at this point of the the main convection. The northeastern quadrant's still pretty dry at this time, but the circulation looks like it's trying to start wrapping some convection around. So it's a pretty interesting development to see that the centers, once it's getting fully together in terms of coupling together itself, looks like models are going to have some adjusting to do in 4 hours when they start coming out again.
Yeah, this is a very interesting track. I see that the storm definitely looks like it seems like its path is going almost the opposite in what the models are taking it, and I think that could catch a lot of people off guard because I think the reason this system is drifting the way it is it seems like it's kind of attracted to a more moist and favorable environment, especially on the south side of it. And so I expect it to start tracking west at some point soon. It's already pretty close to Louisiana, and I expect this to be a very heavy rainmaker, kind of similar to what we've seen the last 2 years with Harvey and Florence. Like this, now we don't expect the storm to stall, but it is very slow moving, and that could be a potentially catastrophic flood threat.
True statement, and the fact that this is headed south, while not the most expected, there is southerly flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, but I don't think that, at least I was not expecting southerly flow there to bring this south, especially since surface level flow should be what's giving this the most influence. So I guess there's a southerly surface level flow as well, but it looks like surface level flow is more to the west. So it's very interesting to see this head southward like this. I think it might be because the mid-level center here is being more steered because the upper level flow is stronger, and because the surface level and mid-level centers are very close to coupling together, I think that they're both just going to follow each other until they mesh, and I think that this southerly jog is very bad news in the long run for places in western Louisiana and eastern Texas.
Yes.
And just to clarify with the satellite imagery that we're seeing, it looks like in the latest frames that we're starting to see the centers kind of finish aligning right around, what is this? I think that's 88 degrees west, just about. You kind of start to see convection trying to wrap around a more center kind of thing. Well, not that's terrible. That's a terrible description of it, but the core of the system per se. It looks like the centers are trying to align there. It doesn't look like it's down in the 26s in terms of degrees latitude, but it's approaching 27 at this point in time, which, like we said earlier, at least for this latitude is at least half a degree further south than any models had anticipated this to be. I see you're pulling up some infrared imagery right now. The beautiful tropical tidbits loading signs.
Yep, it's pulled up now, and it's very obvious that there's lots of convection firing near the center, and I think it's also quite obvious that this is probably going to be, if not at this advisory, in the next advisory, a tropical depression. I think it's very close, if not there.
It'd be helpful if we had recon in right now rather than. Oh, there is a recon actually leaving to go into the storm right now, actually, from Texas.
I do believe so, and I think
expecting that.
That'll probably determine whether this is a TD or not.
I don't know if they're going to be able to get there in time before the advisory comes out in 30 to 40 minutes or so.
Yeah, I do see your guys' point. It does look like it's moving almost due south, which does worry me slightly because that means it could end up taking a more southerly track and potentially end up moving closer to the Houston area.
What's kind of surprising me about the direction of the storm right now is that last night, in models and stuff, there is two competing steering flows on this system. You have the stronger high pressure out in the southwestern Atlantic, off the southeast coast of America, and the trough that's going to be coming in that would try to push up north and then east, and then you have a ridge over Southwest America, the Four Corners and northern Texas that would be trying to exert force to put it south. But looking at soundings and stuff, which is just seeing where the wind flows are in different levels of the atmosphere, the southerly direction push from the high pressure in the Southwest America, northern Mexico, is at the higher levels of the atmosphere, where you'd expect a storm that's stronger in intensity to be more influenced by that. And the flow to the north and then northeast from the trough is at lower levels, which would expect to influence more a storm of weaker intensity. And it looks like it's kind of beating the odds, at least from what soundings were saying last night, and kind of finding a way to get south temporarily, at least a few dozen miles further than forecast. But that's also significantly further south than model initiations had it at 2 hours ago or so. The 0Z models came out about 2 hours or so, and they initiated it about, it looks like almost, if you're taking a rough guess at where the center of the storm could be right now, at least 30 miles further north than where it actually is right now. And with a storm of this size, 30 miles can have a major impact on the eventual destination or impacts that any location can have.
Yeah, it could be a huge impact. I do want to address a few things I'm seeing in chat. I'm seeing this 866 millibar figure floating around. That's not going to happen. I don't know, but that's not happening. If a model did output that,
it's the mesoscales.
That's not.
They're not properly computed to the ocean.
No, they're not. So
no,
don't.
Yeah, because the 3 kilometer NAM is trying to show, we're gonna have this 886 millibar storm in 60 hours. It says 883 millibars in 60 hours right off the coast of Louisiana. This is a mega catastrophe of unseen proportions. That's not gonna happen. Hank, who's our resident genius on technical analysis, would explain, as he did in our Discord chats earlier. If you want to join our Discord, links in the description.
Nice plug.
The model shows this because the NAM models aren't correctly aligned with oceanography kind of forecasting. They're more directly just used for overland America for regular forecasts going on with the mainland United States. Everyone loves to use it during the winter and stuff, for example, because it shows everything that's happening, in terms of snowfall or storms that are happening through the jet streams that are happening over the mainland United States. It's not supposed to be used for tropical cyclones, and I think that the forecast models that are pulling out right now from the NAM are just confirmation of that.
It's solely used for pretty much, like you said, like inland. It's used for severe weather forecasting, winter weather forecasting. It's not computed for anything tropical cyclone wise. That's why it's bombing it out at whatever the heck miles per hour.
883 millibars.
Yeah, but just if you see that, don't pay any attention to that. I mean, it's like Strat said, and like I just said, they're mainly computed for severe weather events, winter weather events, for like inland events, not for oceanic events like tropical cyclones. They're not computed to do that, and because of that, they're gonna overblow absolutely everything tropical wise going on. So just disregard it.
Yeah, Isaac's completely correct with that. I know the models you're looking at just because the Discord chat was blowing up with it earlier today, but the resolutions on it is just the same, and it's only the 3 kilometer NAM, so it's only the highest focus on model that's trying to show that the other mesoscales are, at least the 12 kilometer NAM and such, are more reasonable. But then going to the ones that are kind of hyper focused on, you know, pinpointing severe thunderstorms, which can be very small in area, are not going to work well with large tropical cyclones out over open water.
I would agree. So now that we have all of that addressed and we can see the southerly shift here that PTC2 has taken, here's the question. How is this going to impact the future of PTC2 and the and really just the track and intensity and where it's going to strike? So how do we think this is going to impact it? Because I think this means we could have the potential for a significantly stronger system.
Yeah,
The
that's
further south it goes, the further west it can pull.
exactly. That means it could make land. That means the likelihood of it making landfall in Texas and especially in the Houston area could increase. Weren't really expecting this southwesterly shift to happen or southeasterly shift to happen either.
The way I see it at this point in time is that it could either go one of two ways. The storm could be fairly weak or remain fairly weak, maybe
Sure.
stay tropical storm force intensity, and because of that it'll move farther north and make landfall far faster than it would if it was stronger. So that could happen. That's scenario one. And then scenario two, in my opinion, is it being a stronger storm, getting stronger at a much faster rate, and because of that, it being more south rather, and because of that, it'll have more time over open waters to intensify. And keep in mind, the waters are pretty darn warm right now at this time, so it's definitely conductive for at least a low end Category 1 hurricane here, I'm afraid. And because if it takes a longer time, it'll have, like I said, more room over open water and thus be able to intensify more. And the solution towards the Texas-Louisiana border, western Louisiana, even as far west as maybe southeastern Texas, could not be ruled out. But with the NAT track, you see it kind of taking like the median in between the two solutions, and going straight through Louisiana as an intensifying hurricane due to the fact that the sea surface temperatures are pretty darn high up until landfall.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have any other opinions.
No, you're completely correct with that. What I think is going to happen is the National Hurricane Center is going to shift their current track east to try to match up with the current model runs, and then once they confirm with the recon plane leaving Texas right now, what we've noticed on satellite imagery, that the actual centers, at least for the direct time frame of model initiation, has in statistical terms has gone statistically further south than what the margin of error would dictate for the storm within the 6-hour time frame of the model initiation. That you're going to see the models try to jump back to the west again, and the National Hurricane Center is going to try to readjust to match that. So I honestly wouldn't expect the National Hurricane Center to jank their forecast track in the upcoming update too far to the east before having to potentially shift it back west if this trend continues maintaining a southward motion, unless we see a sudden jerk to the north that we aren't really expecting. Shear is relatively low where the system is right now, and if I'm not mistaken, it's expected to maintain a lower wind shear area at least for the next couple of days, and the water is very warm. I think we're talking 30 to 31 degrees Celsius waters. So the further south the system stays, the further west it can go, and in turn the further it can intensify. So seeing this kind of unexpected development is going to keep us on even further guard for stronger intensification that we wouldn't have been expecting otherwise.
Yeah, we'll see what happens when the ZOZ runs come out, when they put in that recon information and the other information into the models, and see what they come out with.
I think just an interesting note is if you look at satellite imagery, not just from the past few hours, not just from the past 2 hours, but if you look at it from the past 5 to 6 hours, you'll see the direction of the center has been almost due south, just barely west of south over the past 6 hours or so. While if you look at what the model initiations have wanted for it, was immediate moves to just south of west instead. And we're seeing, instead of just south of west, we're seeing just west of south. It's a bit of a word garble, but what it's saying is that it's almost a 90-degree difference in direction from what models were wanting to see. And I can't really tell just because it's a small storm. We don't have a fully defined center, but it doesn't look like there's any direct stoppage in that movement at this time, which would be significant cause for concern, potential further intensification. This trend doesn't stop, then within the next couple of hours, we'll see this approach 27 degrees north, which is, if you look at the models, none have it reaching that latitude level in any of their 0Z runs at the moment, except for, I think this is the Tab D, but that brings it there 48 hours out south of New Orleans, not right now, south of the Mississippi-Alabama border.
Yeah, and I mean, with the southward shift, I think we're also going to see more intensity from it. So I think especially if this doesn't jog back north, and if this isn't just a fluke or a jog, I'm sorry, Max, you're having really bad feedback. But if this doesn't take a jog back north, I think we could see a much more intense system, sheerly just based on what we're seeing right now. So, Strut, I'm actually going to have to respectfully disagree with you a little bit on the National Hurricane Center shifting east with the models. I think that the Hurricane Center has acknowledged the southward shift, and I think that they're going to keep things pretty similar to where they have them now. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up in with like 12 to 18 hours having it in a very similar area. I'm just, assuming, since they don't have a direct center fix right now, that they're going to rely on their earlier data and just try to move it at least a little bit east to kind of match what the models are saying. And then tomorrow morning to midday tomorrow, they're going to probably try to start moving it west again, most likely, as they get a better center fix tonight. If this recon had left an hour and a half ago, I would totally agree with you that they'd probably keep it where it is right now and let the models catch up to them, but they just can't really, fully confirm what they want to put in at the moment, at least just from what we're seeing. And, as we know, they typically like to go with ATCF and then just adjust the intensities a bit. I am going to be very interested, though, at the within the next 20 minutes, though, to see if they keep it where the ATCF had it in terms of latitude around 27.9 degrees north, or if we see them match the further south direction and have that latitude be closer to 27.5 degrees. That's going to be, the biggest thing I look for in terms of seeing how are they going to adjust the track of this. And in terms of intensity, I also think you're correct as well, not just because of its time over water now and potential westward shift in track, but as we've gone through the past 24 hours and the centers have started to align, you can see pretty clearly with the satellite imagery that the core of the system has become really small. It has a small area of core convection around the center, with the north a bit exposed, and all that kind of extra convection that we were seeing produce a significant severe weather across the southeastern United States yesterday is completely detached from it. Some is still within influence. You see some bands out, extending further east away from the storm. You have one larger one. I don't know if you have satellite. You do have the satellite imagery on the screen right now, actually. You have that one significant band that's kind of flaring up a bit to the south and east, and then you have this kind of larger one that's fading away that's further off to the east. And the other influence is that clip of heavy rainfall and convection that's still over the New Orleans area. But compared to yesterday, we have a much smaller system with a much smaller core, and smaller systems are much more prone to rapid changes in intensity, whether it be rapid intensification or rapid weakening. Just with the environment it's in right now, we could unfortunately see some rapid intensification. I know right now we're expecting high-end Category 1 to low-end Category 2 at maximum, but, if this trend continues, we could potentially see other forecasts in general begin to change to potentially upwards trend. But we also have to keep in mind, regardless of this, that it only has 3 days at maximum. So we'll need quick organization from this point to be able to reach what the forecasts have for it at this time.
Yeah, the problem is, though, if it does head farther south, then it's going to have more time. So it might
exactly
have more
correct.
than
Right.
3 days. If
It'll have more time over water, and what I'm seeing on the HWRF, it's from what I'm seeing in this forecast model, going all the way to Louisiana, it's showing a minimum pressure of 959 millibars.
With the HRF run, you also got to note that one, it keeps it's one of the further east models right now, actually having it make landfall right. It tries to bring it up into the delta towards the landfall towards New Orleans, and it doesn't dip it further south. It doesn't dip it far enough south to where the current models are right now. Kind of develops it at 30 hours from its initialization, then rapidly intensifies it, bringing it due north. I feel like the intensity of guidance that it has could be increasingly more likely, but its track forecast doesn't really fully line up with what we could be expecting anymore.
No.
This is also the 18Z run though too. I'd be very interested to see what their 0Z model run says in terms of direct track and intensity forecast together.
Does that how does that
check,
affect the
check.
chances of tropical storm force winds in major areas such as Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and even Houston?
Well, initially I was going to look at the model spread, and I was like, hey, the UK Met for some reason has it going into Texas, but it does it at a very fast speed. All these models at 0Z have it making landfall at just about 72 hours or so. So 3 days from 8 p.m. Eastern, which would be 7 p.m. Central. So they would be expecting a landfall. I think that's, yeah, it would be Saturday night is what they'd be expecting initially. I'd be interested to see if that changes now. The further west it goes, so you could argue that the further south it goes at this point, the less likely it is for hurricane impacts to impact eastern Louisiana and New Orleans, and a higher chance back towards western Louisiana and the Texas border. But I'd much rather prefer to see, a new recon center fix along with the National Hurricane Center position update, and getting a defined center having a designation as tropical depression first before we make any clear assumptions about that. For now, I'm just saying,
guys, Strat.
Yep.
The new update just came out. It says systems almost to tropical depression, storm surge, heavy rains, and hurricane conditions are possible across north central Gulf Coast in a couple of days. 30 miles an hour, 1,009 millibars, moving west-southwest at 9 millibars, and the center is still at 27.7 north.
Okay, so
Moving
they
at
go
9
at 27.7 north for their center fix.
Yeah, it's just a tad bit south than it was last time. Last time I think it was 27.
I want to say it was the ATCF 2 hours ago, 2.5 hours ago at 27.9. So it is. But the interesting thing to me is they're saying it's moving west-southwest when satellite imagery kind of, unless they're tracking the low-level center rather than the mid. They're probably tracking the low-level center rather than the mid-level center. It could be. But in terms of low-level center, we're seeing more southwest or south-southwest movement. As they couple together, though, could be that's what they're initializing at. I'd be interested, though, to see within the next hour or two if the recon center fixes further south than this location.
yeah,
It's
and
gonna be
we do have a brand new forecast advisory as well.
a forecast advisory. Does it show the intensity in this one? Let's see.
Yeah, it does show
Just
max.
A max forecast
Yes.
To day
of
3.
65 knots.
So yeah, it shows
Yes.
75 miles
Advisory
an hour.
3. This is advisory 3 for PTC2.
I want to see the forecast cone come out because I'm assuming that they're showing it weaker because they shifted it further east on the track, and then I want to see what happens. We're away from the monitoring area in terms of the center. Once we go offline, 14 U.S. posting the latest National Hurricane Center numbers there.
Well, am I still on?
Yes, you are.
Alright. Good, I accidentally unplugged my router a few minutes ago. Oh, just making sure.
Nah, don't worry here. Who's got the keyboard?
It's me.
I think that's Thomas.
That's you, Thomas.
I am letting
Typing at
everyone
rapid
know the stream looks like it cut out for a hot second, and it's back.
I was gonna say
When
it
I-
should be back. If, I'll just put in refresh your page if you have any problems.
And when I mean hot second, I mean like 2 seconds maybe.
I noticed it I noticed the circle of death appear on my screen as I had the up on one of the monitors for like a split second. I was like, oh boy, refresh the page.
And then it came
and then
back.
it's back to perfection.
Yep.
Usually with us, whenever we have problems, just refreshing the page does the trick. That's either two places it happens at the very start of the stream or some random place in the middle of the stream.
And so we'll see here in just a moment how far eastward the cone of uncertainty has been shifted. I'm genuinely interested to see how much farther eastward the track has been shifted, and I think that later a westward shift could occur. So, Estrada, it looks like you may be right in this scenario.
The new outlook is out.
Just for
We've been chatting
saving
about that
image
for a little bit, Max.
Just for
Yeah,
image's sake, guys, I just took a quick screenshot of the 5 p.m. cone or the 7 p.m. cone, just so we can compare them when the new cone comes out, and probably imminently at this point in time.
Yeah, new graphic outlook is out.
A new graphical outlook.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the cone to update because that's the thing I'm paying most attention to in particular. I feel like that's what a lot of people are probably looking at first. It usually comes out at the same time the forecast discussion updates.
Yeah,
So
sometimes it's a little.
the public advisory is out now, and the forecast advisory is out, as well as the wind speed probabilities.
Is cone
with
gonna
the- I think
update
it was-
anytime soon?
I think it was. What?
Is this cone gonna update anytime soon?
Yeah.
I
Probably
remember
within
with
the next
Barbera.
10 minutes.
No, I remember with Barbera. I think it took them about an hour or two for them to update the cone. I don't know why it took them ages, but they did it
Did you just say Barbera?
I think it was Barbara.
Barbera.
I think it was I think it was Barbara.
Hurricane
Alright,
Barbera.
we gotta clip that.
It's-
Yeah, Barbera was pretty barbaric, I know.
I don't know. I remember with
Listen, I've had a
like,
long night.
That was a
Remember-
terrible joke, I'm sorry.
like one storm back in like 2016 or 17.
Oh, it's
quite
it's
late
out
in the
now,
year.
guys.
It took them
I'll
like
send it in the
almost
chat
an
really
hour
quick here.
before. Like they released the outlook like almost an hour late at one point. I remember.
But yep, the new cone is out at this point in time. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Well, they did move it east from what I see. Hold up.
Mm-hmm.
They did. Not that much, though.
Is this correlated for advisory 3?
Yeah.
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 Max, I'm getting severe feedback still.
We moved
I am
it
too.
west by a little bit to directly center Louisiana rather than west center. They moved the angle of landfall though more sharply north.
Yeah.
I think that's so. This current forecast has the differences between the other cone is a further east landfall forecast right now with a sharper angle into land is what the new cone reflects.
Further east. That's a little surprising given the southward track it took.
To keep in mind, they don't have a direct center fix right now with this trend. You know, for all we can know, it could still be the actual low level center could just be further north, and that we're just kind of looking at more of the center of convection where we don't actually have a full center fix, and our ideas on it differ. That's why it's fortunate that we have Recon that exists to go into this thing. Although it hasn't updated for some reason. Was it? Are we at 3 UTC run? This Recon hasn't updated in over an hour.
3 UTC will be here in 15 minutes.
the recon, we haven't gotten updated data in just over an hour now. So I don't think they reached the center of the storm yet, but they should be getting pretty close now whenever an update on that finally comes in. That might not happen while we're live, though, unfortunately.
All right, whatever that noise just was, I know we're on the air, but that does not need to happen again. So, if that's going to continue, then that could be problematic. Okay.
I noticed we're getting some discussion in the chat. This is a bit off topic of whether or not Barbara was a Category 5 storm. Just because, we're kind of winding down a bit. I know.
Yeah, this is the Atlantic anyway. Like more people would be I would say more people would be invested in. Typically, our audience is more Atlantic centered than East Pac centered here in the U.S.
Was it whoever is on the 413 U.S. account? They are right. There's a inbound flight right now. I think, like we just said, though, data from it, unless there's another source that I don't see, hasn't been updated in over an hour now. The last update was at 9:43 Eastern time. So you could assume that it's close to the center of the storm at this time. But
yeah, I'm not getting any.
Probably not directly there yet, and I'm going to be very interested to see when I wake up tomorrow morning what some of this recon data has shown and how the storms continue to move. If once the centers fully mesh together, we continue to see this kind of south-southwest trend with the convection, then I'd be more concerned. We're a bit too early in to be making, full assumptions on it at this point in time. But the flow of the system itself has definitely been in that direction. We should wait overnight and see if we get any change back onto the course of normality or status quo of what we were originally expecting.
What else has me interested about the track of this storm is how far north it's expected to track, because it looks like the current cone is taking it as far north as St. Louis, and given the amount of rainfall, it's gonna dump much further south. We've seen this last year with even last year with storms we had something similar. We had a similar setup with Alberto last year. How do you think potential tropical storm Barry could fare going up north to potentially affect the Midwest?
I mean, the Midwest itself is over 5 days out. What you consider the Midwest, probably Illinois, is barely in the forecast count at day 5. So it'd be a bit too early to tell. Long-term models, I would assume, have it getting picked up from that area where day 5 ends and having it be swept to the north and east with a trough, because that's expected to be one of the steering influences of the storm. So I don't think it'll get to the core Midwest, like Wisconsin and Minnesota, but, if you look at longer term models, it could end up, getting probably just absorbed into a trough and bringing some rainfall back to the East Coast by next week.
Yes, and we have definitely seen a lot of storms track up into the Gulf like this. Some of them, we have seen some of them go further north due to what's called the brown ocean effect. And since we have a lot of ground saturation in that area, what are the chances you think that this could potentially carry the impacts of the storm further north?
Well, I mean, if you look at the 18Z GFS precip model run total accumulated precipitation, it shows the Midwest getting 2 inches of rain at maximum. It shows most of the area getting maybe 1.5 inches at most, and a good chunk of that not related to the storm itself. The biggest areas, if you're looking at the Midwest for potential impacts would be southern Illinois and Indiana for some spare rainfalls that gets absorbed into the trough they'll be picking up as it weakens over land. The extra saturation, though, would definitely be significant cause for concern for extra flooding over riverbanks and such, for severe damage and flooding in Louisiana, where we've already seen significant rainfall totals before the storm has even been developed into a tropical depression, much less started its intensification trend that we're expecting.
I'm just reading over the National Hurricane Center discussion now that it's been recently put on here, and I'm noting that the forecast, the forecast confidence rather was the word I'm looking for. The forecast confidence they're noting is not really that high at this point in time. And they're also noting that they're forecasting it to be only gradual strengthening throughout the next 12 hours or so. Then after that time, they're forecasting it to be more significant strengthening as it goes over and takes advantage over those warm sea surface temperatures and the moist atmosphere and favorable upper level pattern over the system. So I just wanted to note that.
Right, and with that being said, we are... Sorry for interrupting. I do just want to tell everyone we are into the final 10 minutes of the stream. I know there are a lot of you, so if you have any questions, please ask them now. I know we've had some questions if Barry will cause... well, it could be Barry. Will cause rain in Pennsylvania. Probably not, at least not as a tropical entity, that's for sure. But PTC 2, likely to be Barry, will not produce much rain there.
I noticed someone noted in chat, and it's kind of right now actually being coincided with a few messages in our Discord server of the potential flooding of rivers in Louisiana approaching potentially record or levels in one area. I think they said it'd be just short in one area for the Mississippi basin river level. They're saying, oh, well, one of the forecasts right now is just below that. And right now, at the same time, someone in our Discord had actually posted an image showing the Mississippi River at New Orleans forecast to have a 20-foot river flow peak, which is right on major flood level strength, or not strength, but intensity in terms of depth of water.
Yeah, going off of that, they're already. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, of course.
Oh, I was gonna say they already issued a flood emergency for the city of New Orleans already because of the flooding, and I looked at some video earlier this morning, and it's pretty bad. There's oh, that's loud. I don't know who has that. But I was looking at a video earlier, and there was water easily about a foot deep around the streets, and probably even get into people's homes. When I was looking earlier, it's probably gonna get worse as time goes on, unfortunately. So not only is it going to be a wind threat or a storm surge threat, it's also going to be a rain threat.
Because what is it? If you look at just the weather.gov warning map for America, and you just zoom into the Louisiana region, you see the flood warning stretching with the Mississippi River down, all the way down the Delta, and the flash flood warnings through good chunks of Louisiana itself right now, including Baton Rouge and Lafayette. I'm not sure whether, just on the base map, I'm not sure whether they'd include New Orleans right now just because New Orleans has the storm surge watch on top of that. Certain levels, if you have more than one warning in one location, the highest level will precede something else. So I can't just tell from this base image whether or not there is a flash flood warning there, but based on the precipitation that we're seeing in the past few hours, it's possible. Although it is notable in the past 2 to 3 hours, especially in the past hour now on infrared, you can tell that heavier convection that's detached from the main system that's over Louisiana right now is starting to deteriorate.
Yeah, very little rainfall and no flash flood warnings are currently in effect in the state of Louisiana.
Oh, I thought there is flash flood warnings. When is this updated as? It looks like there is still flash flood warnings in effect from the map I see right now, unless that just changed in the past 30 seconds.
Yeah, there's no. Encoder is a flash.
It's a flash flood watch. Okay, I'm just reading it wrong. There's flood warnings following the Mississippi River down to the Delta, and there's flash flood watches throughout significant portions of Louisiana, southern Louisiana as well.
All right.
That's just a gaffe on my part.
You're good.
Someone's asking, I don't know if anyone knows the technical or tropical history. I think we all know how I did on the Super Cyclone Challenge, but someone's asking what are the chances the Zeta-like storm happens this year? I have no idea what Zeta is. Does anyone else know?
That means that we would have 2005 levels of activity, and quite simply, that's a no.
I think they're asking like a storm like Tropical Cyclone Zeta.
I think they're referring to, are we going to get there? Yeah, I guess they're referring to if a storm like Zeta is possible. Something interesting also in this latest NHC outlook is they've also extended the possible area of development for this East Pac system.
Someone wanted to answer about Zeta in particular?
You know what I'll answer. So, a Zeta-like storm, a subtropical cyclone, of course, storms like Zeta, they occurred in the subtropics, so what you'd have to see is really a frontal boundary producing, again, a subtropical cyclone. We discussed what that was last night, but I mean, of course it's possible, but I think that pinpointing if that's going to occur will not be so easy to do until later in the year.
Zeta was tropical its entire existence.
That's true, and my apologies. I heard there may have been a little bit of chaos in the chat. Max, I did have to local mute you for a little bit because of feedback. If you could calm that down a little bit over our last few minutes of coverage, that would be good. But yeah.
Looks like it's gone now.
Sorry about the chaos in the chat. So, yeah, it really does look like this storm, at least, is going to be a relatively big one. So Force 13 will be continuing to cover this. We are going to close out the stream now, as it is almost to the top of the next hour. We will be stopping here. So to everyone that's here, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for interacting. Thank you for asking questions. We do appreciate it. You can check us out on Facebook at YouTube. Facebook is not at youtube.com. Facebook is at facebook.com/Force13. YouTube, you're probably there right now. youtube.com/Force13. Twitter, I think you can guess it by now. Twitter.com/Force13. You can check out Patreon at patreon.com/Force13. You can check us out at all those places, and then we also have our Discord link invite in the description, so you can go check us out there. Again, thank you so much for watching. There will be more live coverage and more information on this storm from Force 13 tomorrow. So again, thank you so much for watching. And to the team, any closing thoughts?
Keep an eye on the storm. Listen to your local officials, and if they tell you to evacuate, evacuate.
Good night and stay safe.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.